Hello, everyone. Alice here, and we are here for our August movie night. And as per usual, that means that we have a fun video to watch. And today's video involves the lovely Distress Oxide inks. So I got hooked on these when I went down to San Diego for the reunion because Deetra so kindly lent me some of hers to play with for a few minutes. And even though I didn't get to explore them thoroughly, I just couldn't believe how an ink could be so different. And that was the thing that really surprised me a lot, was that even though I've played with lots of different inks, you know, there's the dye inks, there's pigment inks, now there's chalk inks, and, you know, I've played with, I thought, all the different options, at least a little bit. The distress inks, these are just really different in the way that they feel, and then of course in the way that they work and the fun things you can do with them. So they kind of feel like a little blend of everything. I can show you a little bit where I had used them in my booklet here. Just gonna put my phone on quiet, sorry guys. And right here in my book, she lent me some inks and I played with them. I did a little bit of stamping, and you can see how they're quite thick, like you can see them quite well over top of the pattern. And so in that way, they're a little bit like a pigment ink, but they do other things. And I thought that, you know, we might want to see, since they were such a big new product that came out in January, we might want to see a little bit more of what makes them so fun and why the people that are getting hooked on them, like our fabulous Scrap Happy sister Deetra, why she's become such a fan of them, and why she's got me on the Distress Oxide chain too. So, you know, I've joined the gang, I'm part of the team, I'm officially a fan. So today I brought up just one video. It's like 20 some minutes, like just 23 minutes or something like that. And it's a Distress Oxide video from Jennifer Maguire. And we know that she is a goddess of stamping, or basically the goddess of stamping, because she's amazing with that. And so if you're going to see somebody show you all the cool things you can do with them, and show you really easily lots of options, she's the gal to do it, I think. This video isn't, I think it's a couple weeks old, but it was made after all of the new colors were released. So I think they just released 12 new colors in the Distress Oxide line, and those should be hitting the market right away. If they're not available online, I'd be really surprised, because they're talking about them everywhere. So yeah, we'll talk about, I think that they've done a really smart thing by testing the market with like a certain limited range of colors. And now that they've seen that they're really taking off and that people are really enjoying them, they've started making more colors. I really like some of the new colors, and of course that just makes me want to do more shopping, which is crazy. But I think having the inspiration to actually go out and make some projects with these is just the right fit, so that I can use a little bit of what I've got and be able to justify getting some new purchases, right? So that's kind of my plan. And we'll start the video and then we'll chat about it afterwards. So that is the plan. I'll share my screen and we can share the computer sound and this one here.
Hi there, and thanks for stopping by. It's Jennifer. I thought I would do another video using Distress Oxide inks today, since 12 new colors have recently come out. Now, if you haven't seen my first video on Distress Oxide inks, please be sure to check it out. I will link to it here. This is kind of another exploration of things you can do with these inks. So I have to apologize for a couple things. First of all, there are a bunch of cards. I went over the top, kind of random order. I tried to pull it together as much as I could. I was just playing and videotaping as I was going. Second, my daughter picked out my nail polish, so you'll notice that I have pink and purple nail polish on, but she insisted I do so. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the new colors. These are the 12 new colors of Distress Oxide inks that were just released, and I am head over heels because these are bright colors. So if you don't have any oxide inks, these are definitely good ones to start with. I really like all the colors included in this, and I'm going to focus on using these today. Now, if you've never used them, Distress Oxide inks are the most unique ink I've ever used because they have some pigment properties and some dye properties, and so you get the best of both worlds. Also, when they come in contact with water, they create this oxidized look where it kind of turns white or it brightens up, and you'll see some of that today in this video. Again, be sure to check out my first video where I show many things you can do with the inks. This today is just going to be focused on stamping with water. So here are all of the Distress inks together. There are 24 together now, and you can see we pretty much got all the colors included in the palette, and I'm really excited about this. These little ink swatches I made using some free downloads that I have over on my blog, so be sure to check that out if you want to create your own. And these fit into coin pocket sleeves, so you can keep them all organized. Another thing I wanted to mention that I don't do much of today is in today's video is that these inks work great on dark color cardstocks because they have that pigment or opaque property to them. So you can blend on dark cardstocks and even stamp on them. And when you get it's almost like you flip a switch to turn them on and make them more intense. So keep that in mind. Be sure to watch my old video to learn more about that. But today we're going to focus on stamping with water with the newer colors. I'm going to start by actually stamping with water using a stencil instead of a stamp. That's what I did on the background here. This is really fun to do. Stencils are inexpensive, so they're a great tool to have. I'm using Neenah white cardstock today. You could use any kind of white cardstock for this probably. I found this worked well for me. And I am applying some of the new colors of the Distress Oxide ink, and I'm putting the colors in the top corner. What I like to do is put down one color, move to the next, and then go back with the one before it and blend it in a little bit. Be sure to overlap the colors. Now, if you have trouble blending Distress inks, try Distress Oxides. They are very forgiving because of that pigment property to it, because you can still move the ink once it's on the paper. So you can blend it together beautifully, and look at that gorgeous pink and yellow background. I just love it. So I have a stencil here. This is the My Favorite Things Radiating Rays, and I'm spritzing it with water until I have like an even sheen of water on it. Not so much that it'll drip off when I lift it. So now I'm going to take that wet stencil, only thing that's on it is water, and stamp it down onto our inked background. Now I'm going to put a paper towel over it and just press that and leave it there for about 2 minutes, just pressing the whole time. And when I remove it, look at that. You get this oxidized look where anywhere the water touched that background, it looks like white, and it has a suede kind of look to it that's soft and creamy and just gorgeous. I find that by leaving the wet stencil on there for a few minutes, you get a more intense look, and by putting the paper towel on top, it keeps it nice and clean. Any water that oozes out the side of the stencil gets absorbed. Now let me show you what I put on this card. Very simple. I used this Simon Says Stamp See You Soon stamp set. This is in their recent card kit, which is definitely worth checking out. It is such a great kit. I really like that sentiment. I gold heat embossed it on white. I also created some faux stitched sun and cloud die cuts using this Lawn Fawn Spring Showers die set. And I added some little jewels from Lucy's cards. So all of those elements are white on that card so that the focus stays on that real beautiful, creamy, faux suede looking background. So I have a lot of examples, so I got to keep moving here. This next one uses a lot of the same inks and stencil, but this time I'm using shimmer spray instead of water. I'm also kind of doing a circular motion of blending so that the ink blends from the inside out, and you'll see that this is very easy to do with the Distress Oxide inks because of that pigment property. You see that gray piece of paper over on the left? I put that there so I don't get my fingerprints on the inked background. That's something you want to be careful with. Okay, so now I have that same stencil, but this time I'm misting it with the shimmer spray from Sukaneko. I love this stuff. And I'm stamping that onto the card. Again, putting a paper towel over it for about 2 or 3 minutes, lifting it off, and you'll see there's shimmer on that. It's hard to see in the video actually, but there is a great shine to this. Now, because of the shimmer in that water, it doesn't give as crisp of a result. You could also try pigment powders such as Perfect Pearls in water. That would give a great result too. I added a simple white sun die cut to the center, and then I gold heat embossed the message that says "You are crazy beautiful" on vellum and put that on top by hiding glue behind those heat embossed letters. This is the stamp set that sentiment is from, a company called The Ink Road, and I really like these creative sentiments in here. I'll use them a few times in this video. I also added some little yellow jewels to the background, and that's it. I wanted to keep the focus on that beautiful background that has a little shimmer to it. I have another example of stamping with stencil and water on a blended background, but this time I layered the inks more. So let me show you what I did. I started by doing peacock feathers in the center. That's my favorite color, by the way. I just am head over heels for it. Then I put salty oceans around it. Now look at that. You can see I got big splotches of ink. It doesn't matter with oxide inks. Those will blend out by just going over them again. So here I have two colors applied down. The peacock feathers and the salty ocean. But I'm going to actually come and add more color on top around the edges with seedless preserves. That's something you can do with these oxide inks because they have a bit of an opaque property that allows you to put them on top of each other. So this time I'm misting with water the Simon Says Stamp Star Medallion stencil, laying that down carefully, putting a paper towel on top, holding it there for a couple minutes and removing it, and look at that gorgeous result. Absolutely beautiful. I love the look of that, especially with the ink going from the inside out and that little bit of purple on the corners. So I wanted to show you how I finished this card up. I did a bunch with this design. You can see I have a congrats die cut. That's black cardstock covered with a little Wink of Stella shimmer pen, and then I put a coat of clear embossing powder on top. Now that congrats die cut is from this Pink and Main die set. It cuts a shadow and it cuts the word. So I die cut the shadow from vellum to put behind it. I find myself making a lot of congrats cards these days, so I really like the set. I also use the Pink and Main congrats stamp set to black heat emboss the "So Proud of You" underneath. Also using the Poppy Stamps Starry Border die that you see there on the top, I die cut a bunch of tiny silver glitter paper stars from this Die Cuts with a View metallic paper. There's foil and glitter paper on here, and the great thing is it has adhesive on the back already. So I was able to die cut a bunch of glitter stars and add them to the card very quickly. I thought that congrats die and stamp set was perfect for this because it didn't cover up too much of that background that I really wanted to show. Okay, another example for you using a very similar design, but this time I wanted to show you two of the colors that are great for kind of adding a little bit of lightening or darkening to your inked background. So I'm creating an inked background here on white cardstock once again, but I wanted to kind of make the edges a little darker or lighter. And there are two new Distress Oxide ink colors that are great for that. The first is Black Soot. You can lightly apply this over an inked background and look at how it kind of makes it a little bit darker there. So if a color is too light for you, you can use this to darken it up. Or if a color is a little too dark for you, you can use Antique Linen to kind of brighten it up. So it's nice to have those two colors to add those options. And I'll show you something fun you can do with the black a little later in this video. So again, I'm using a stencil to stamp with water onto this inked background. Again, putting paper towels on top to absorb any excess water and holding it there for a couple minutes before removing it. And look at that effect. That white almost looks like suede or creamy on that background. It's like nothing else I've ever done. But keep in mind you can also stamp with water on distress inked backgrounds or some dye ink backgrounds. It will give a little bit of a different look, but you can use those. And I really love the look of the oxide inks because of that white oxidation that you get. Okay, so all the examples so far shows stamping with water and a stencil, but you can get much crisper, better results if you stamp with water and a background stamp. So I have a bunch of examples showing that here. Now most of these examples do start out with an ink blended background with the oxide inks, so I'm going to kind of speed through that because it's much like what I've already shown you in this video, and I want to show you more card examples. So this is the Lucky Clover, Peacock Feather, and Salty Ocean blended together. That is definitely my favorite color combination, so I have a lot of examples with that. This time I am misting my Simon Says Stamp Flora stamp, and I'm going to stamp that with water onto the background. Now I'm holding that there again for 2 or 3 minutes and removing it, and look at that background. It's gorgeous how that water causes the reaction to get that oxide look on the colorful background. So beautiful, and the results are very clean, so they look nice and complete. Now for this one, I did the same design that I showed you before with the congrats message. Allowed a lot of that background to show nicely. Because this technique works so well, I wanted to do a few more examples. This one has a very detailed background stamp. Now I started with picked raspberry and seedless preserves, and I wanted to show you, you can blend from the outside in or the inside out, whatever works for you. Just experiment and see what gives you the best blended results. But if you struggled with blending other inks, you want to try the oxide inks. They're very easy for blending. Now this time I'm misting the Simon Says stamp, Cora background stamp. You want to look and make sure you get a pretty even coat of water, not so much that it's going to drip off. Stamp that down for a couple minutes and remove it, and look at that gorgeous pattern. Even with a detailed background stamp like that, you're able to keep the image nice and clean. Again, I did the same card design here, but I wanted to point something out. You see those little drops on there? I did those with the Clear Tonic Nouveau drops. It's like glossy accents. You could use that instead if that's what you have. But check it out. Even though it's clear, when I put it on the oxide background, it changed color a little bit. So it turned bright pink underneath those dots, which I thought was so cool. So some of your products will react with those oxide inks too. It's really fun to do. Okay, so another thing you can do with Distress Oxide ink is, instead of blending your background, you can do direct to paper with the ink. So I'm actually doing 2 examples here at once, got kind of carried away, but on both of these I started by covering a piece of white cardstock with peacock feathers, going direct to paper. So I'm completely covering the paper with the ink. And what's cool is when this dries, it has like a chalky finish to it that is very different than cardstock. So you could even just ink up your own paper that way. Now I've misted this background stamp, and I'm going to put it down onto that inked background, hold it there for a couple minutes. This one on the left was sitting there for a bit. This is the Falling Stars background on the peacock feathers inked white cardstock, and look at that cool effect that you get. So peel this one off, and again we have that oxidation happening just with the one color of ink in the background. So you could see that was very fast to put together, and I pulled them into cards with the same design as the one I showed you before. Now when I saw there was a black soot Distress Oxide, a black ink, wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I just tried it for direct to paper and stamping with water on top, and the results are incredible. So here I'm taking the black soot and covering white cardstock. When this dries, you get this like dark charcoal looking chalky finish paper that is incredible. So I'm misting up a Flora background stamp, and I'm going to stamp that down onto the inked background. Hold it there a couple minutes and remove it, and the results are stunning. So you get that suede creamy look that is gorgeous, and it looks especially good on that black soot background. This is definitely one that I'll be using many times in the future. Now I will show a variation of that background a little later in this video, and I'll show you how I pulled this together into a card. But before I do that, I wanted to show you rainbow blending. So rainbow blending is something that I love to do, and it's definitely easier to do with oxide inks than any other ink. Here I'm using 3 colors, a red, a yellow, and a blue, to get a rainbow background. So all I'm doing is making sure to overlap the colors quite a bit. And when you overlap those colors, you get the colors in between, the orange and the green, and you can create a beautiful rainbow background. This time I'm going to mist with water once again, a background stamp, hold it on top for a bit, and check out that beautiful result you get. Now as you heat set those backgrounds, the pattern actually intensifies, which I think is really cool. Now I had 2 little spots on my background, so I decided to trim the piece down, put it in the center of a note card, keeping it very simple. I die cut a heart from vellum, and then I stacked up a few white die cuts that say hello from W+9. Then I white heat embossed the word friend under that from this Birch Press Make a Statement stamp set. Very simple, added a few little jewels on it too. I wanted the focus to be on that really chalky, creamy looking rainbow background that we created. And this shows you don't need many oxide inks to have fun with them. You can blend them together to create new colors. Here's another rainbow background that I created. This time I used a few more ink colors. I added in abandoned coral, twisted citron, and a little bit of peacock feathers. So there's another look that you can get with the rainbow. This time I'm going to mist up this awesome triangle or abstract triangle background from Simon Says Stamp. Mist that with water and stamp it right onto that inked background and let that sit for a couple minutes. When I remove this and dry it, it's amazing how creamy and beautiful it is. So I encourage you to try blending different colors together. With the oxide inks, the blending is very easy to do, and you can even blend tiny little areas of different colors. I definitely find that oxide inks are the best for creating rainbow blended backgrounds. Okay, now for something a little bit different. This time we're going to stamp with water and color. And I'm actually going to do this one on craft color cardstock. Remember that oxide inks have a pigment property to them. That makes them opaque, so you can stamp them on darker color backgrounds and they show up nicely. So I have some Ranger craft paper. I'm going to use my Misty this time. I just found it was helpful, but you don't need to if you don't want to. I have a background stamp from Simon Says Stamp in here. I'm going to close it into my Misty. Now the first thing I'm going to do is ink that stamp with a variety of colors of oxide inks. I'm going to ink with one color towards the top, wipe away a little bit off the edge so that I don't have blunt lines where the ink pad stopped, so it kind of blends out, and I'm going to stamp that. Then I'm going to continue to the next color doing the same thing until I have a rainbow of color going down my card. So you'll see that each time I make sure to use a dry cloth to wipe away some of that ink at the top and the bottom so there are no harsh lines. And you want to make sure you overlap your inks between each one. The more they overlap, the better blending you will get. So as I stamp this, you'll see the color is on that craft cardstock. It isn't very intense just yet. It's nice, it shows up nicely, but once it gets wet, it's almost like a light switch turns on and the color intensifies. It really brightens up. So instead of spraying this with water, which I totally could do, I'm actually going to clean off the stamp, mist the stamp with water, and then stamp that water right on top of the color. So we're actually applying water just to where the ink is. So when I stamp it up, it lines up nicely. Leave it there for a couple minutes, and when I remove it, check it out. It is brightened up, especially when we take the heat gun to it. So as this dries, it's almost like you turned a light switch on and all the colors intensified on that craft background. Absolutely beautiful, and that oxidation gives it like a chalky look that is just stunning. You really can't achieve this with any other inks, and there you can see the beautiful rainbow background that you get on craft color cardstock. So I finished this one off just like I did the other Hello Heart cards. I stacked up those die cuts in the center and white heat embossed friend below it. Very simple design, keeping the focus on that colorful background that we created. If you look closely, you can see that oxidized look that you get with the color on craft cardstock and adding water to it. Since I like the result of stamping with color and water, thought I'd do some more. This one is color on color. So what I did is I created a background completely covered with Lucky Clover Distress or Oxide ink. So that was white cardstock covered with the ink. Putting it into my Misty, and then I'm going to mist my stamp with water. So this is a clean stamp. I'm going to mist it with water and stamp it right onto the background. And you'll see we get that look that I showed you before, where you stamp with the water and you get that oxide look where it kind of looks like suede. Now I'm going to heat set that, and then I'm going to do one more fun thing to this. I'm going to come in with some Salty Ocean ink onto the stamp, mist it just a little bit, just a tiny bit, and stamp right on top. So what happens is we have that oxide look, but we're going to add a little bit of color to it. We're going to add this blue color to it. So we'll have a green background with that oxide look with blue in it. It's really beautiful. Now I could have combined steps there. I didn't have to stamp with water first. I could have just done the blue ink with water and stamped that. But I found this gave a more intense result, and it creates a beautiful background. Now before we move on to the other backgrounds, I wanted to show you this design because I use it on the next few cards. That leaf there, this is really fun to do. This is an Ink Road Frond of You stamp, and I'm going to stamp it with Lucky Clover onto white cardstock. Distress Oxide inks stamp beautifully. So that's one thing you can do with them is just stamp with them. And because there is a pigment property to them, they stay wet for a little bit so you can heat emboss them if you move quickly. So here I'm putting a little bit of gold embossing powder just on the tip of the image and heat set that, and now I have this gold dipped looking leaf that is gorgeous. So remember, you can use oxide inks just to do stamping. Okay, so here is the stamp set that leaf is from. I think it's a great stamp set. I also stamped and heat embossed with a gold embossing powder the word wonderful from the Ink Road stamp set that you see there. And I wanted to put a small your over it because I didn't want to cover up my leaf completely. So I dug around in my stamp sets and I found this little your from this Pretty Pink Posh Friends Forever stamp set. And I used that little image with it. So sometimes you can dig around through your stamps and combine sentiments to create new ones. I also added clear ice cube gems or jewels from Lucy's cards, and I put those on the background. And when I glued them on, it did change the color a little bit underneath, which I think is really neat. So that design is one that I used for a few different cards, so I wanted to be sure to show you that. Okay, now this is my last card and definitely my favorite. I think this is so much fun. Very fast to do. I covered some white cardstock with black soot Distress Oxide ink, putting that in my MISTI, and I'm inking up my stamp with Salty Ocean Oxide ink. I'm going to mist that a few times with water, not so much that the color drips off, and then I'm going to close it onto that black soot background. Now I'm going to leave it there for a couple minutes, and then when I remove it, what I'm going to have is that oxide look, but with a little bit of a blue tint to it against that dark gray background. And it is so gorgeous, that suede-y, chalky feel with that tint of blue to it. I am crazy about this. I can't wait to try this with other colors of oxide ink on the black background. So this time I just used a platinum embossing powder to do the leaf solid embossing, and then I added the You Are Wonderful sentiment right on top. Now for those gems, this time I used a pool colored gem, which I thought was fun to kind of pull out that blue that we have in the background. So there you have it, a bunch of ways to use some of the new Distress Oxide inks. Really fun to play with. I encourage you to do what I did and just explore different things. Try a bunch of backgrounds and then pull them together into cards. I apologize for the video being so random and stuffed full of information, but I wanted to be sure to share lots of ideas. If you want, go to my blog. I have photos of all of these cards with more information for you. All my supplies are linked in the YouTube description below, and in the middle are 2 other Distress Oxide videos worth checking out. Thanks so much for sticking with me. I hope you have a great day.
Da-da-da. Stop share. Hi guys, I'm back. Okay, so I'm back and hopefully this working. Yeah, it looks like it's working. Okay, Danelle was here. She says, I'm watching on the road trip. Jeff's driving, so she's not driving. And connection's a little spotty. Hi. And yeah, she said it was the Nina White cardstock. That's right, Heather. And yeah, so what do you think? Like, the more stuff I see done with these Distress Oxide inks, the more I like them. And for me, like, the point of doing like creative things is kind of twofold. I love to learn new creative things because it keeps everything fresh for my scrapbooking, but I also want to pull those into my scrapbooking so that, you know, I get a variety of looks in my book. I don't want to have it all looking the same thing. And Heather says this is the second time she's seen the video, so she's seen it. Yeah, it's out for, I think, 3 weeks or something like that already, so it's not super brand new. Danelle says, I like that she used lots of vellum. And I know that vellum, it was such a thing for so long in scrapbooking, and now that it's back, I'm like, ooh, I love it. I love it. Because I never stopped loving it. It just kind of disappeared for a while. And I thought it was great the way she said, like, she actually applies the adhesive right behind every little letter so that, you know, you don't see any of the adhesive on that. And I love that she shared her little secret for that because when you look at it, you're like, well, how did she stick that on? So I thought that was really great. So has anybody else here actually used the Distress Oxide inks? Have you used them? Heather says no, but I'd like to try it. She says, every time I think of using vellum, I have to remember how it used to be made. Yeah, yeah, old style vellum, original vellum is different than new vellum. So I don't think that we have to worry about calf skins now. But yeah, so with the distress oxides, she talked about how they kind of feel chalky when they're finished, and that's definitely the texture that you get from the little stamped images. Like they definitely feel soft and chalky. Rochelle says, okay, I have to get mine out and play with them again. It's been a while since I've made anything with them. Yay! That's awesome. I'm glad this is inspiring you. It's not just to encourage people to shop, it's encouraging you to use things that you already have. So bonus. I also found myself like finally being able to justify getting a Misty when I watched this. I'm like, oh, I could use it for that. Ooh, I could use it for that, because I've looked at them lots of times and I'm like, unless I'm stamping like lots of things over and over, like Christmas cards maybe, why would I need a Misty? Really, I probably can handle that all by myself without using a fancy little platform. But when I saw her making the rainbow stamped background where she applied one color and then she removed just like the little edge so that you don't get those sharp lines, and then she added the next color and removing the sharp edges, like I was like, oh, that's so smart. I loved that so much. So there was lots of new colors that just came out. So she said there's 24 colors in the Distress Oxides right now. Yeah, and there's 12 that just were released and 12 from the original release. I don't have any of the brand new colors. The ones that I have are from the original release. I just have 4. Yay, but look how bright and colorful they are. And what I really thought was cool was that how easily they blended together. So when she's blending the colors, you could see that it wasn't super painful to try to get those perfect little the blend in between the different colors, because I've done that with dye inks, and I think it's kind of torturous to like, because my perfectionist starts to come out really strong, trying to make it just right and look just right as I blend. And like you get used to it after a while, but her way looked really, really easy. So I'm excited to play with that. And then using the stencil or using the stamps, I thought were 2 really good ways. And I have to say, I have both like a really big collection of stamps and also a really big collection of stencils. And I really thought that that was a great way for me to get a little bit more mileage out of the stencils. I actually didn't go back and rewatch. I know I've watched the first video that she talked about. I should have gone back and rewatched it to see which other techniques she'd done in the first one. So if anybody's interested, when I put up the replay, I'll make sure that I share the link to the first video that she was talking about too. And then her blending, I thought that it was great because the blending was so easy. She was able to blend in those nice circles like so easily and blend the colors out from there, which I thought was ultra cool with that. Anybody here do much with color blending with inks before? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Or is it just something like maybe you've tried it and you're like, okay, I did that once? Or is it something that you do something a little bit more regularly? Any? Because I've done blending mostly with dye inks, but I think that this will make me want to do something like that a little bit more. And actually, I could see, like, Heather says, I've never tried them. I might have to get some to try. Like, so you haven't dyed with any, or like done blending with any other kinds of inks, Heather? No, she hasn't. Okay. And Danelle type something, but I think that didn't quite go as planned. Okay. Yeah, so I thought that the way she blended, and I thought that for me, like I could definitely use that and do my own custom background papers for my scrapbooking. And, with the options of all the scrapbooking paper there is out there, obviously there's no need to create our own background papers, but every once in a while it's kind of cool to make something and be like, I made that. Yeah, I totally made that. So I like to do that once in a while. Danelle says she's played with alcohol inks, but not oxide inks yet. I love the yet. um, yeah, so with the rainbow blending, definitely that makes it easy. I thought it was really cool when she had just applied like the red, the blue, and then she put the yellow in the middle, and she was able to get like a real orange and a real green out of it. Whereas a lot of colors, like I don't think, like I've tried doing that with like just a regular dye ink, and they don't blend that nicely. You don't create new pretty colors when you mix them together. They just seem to kind of get muddy and don't make actual nice pretty vibrant colors, where hers made really nice vibrant colors with that. Like the orange was a nice orange and the green was a nice green, and she hadn't used green or orange ink. It was just in the mixing with the yellows. So I thought that was really cool. And I don't know if she showed it every time, but she definitely showed often that she heat set the ink before she applied the water to it. And I don't know, this was kind of like, it's not directly about the inks, but it's more about your approach to doing crafty things. One thing that I really noticed was she is like a super pro when it comes to, like if something doesn't quite turn out the way it was maybe the way she had wanted it to, or something has slight imperfections, she was really good at covering those kind of things up. Because a couple times I noticed like on her backgrounds there were little spots that obviously had a little more water, so they had kind of bled out a little bit more, and somehow that just happened to be the magic spot where her little leaf kind of covered that section up on the card. Or that one that she made with the rainbow where she cut the edges off because she had like extra little splotches on the sides that she wasn't happy with. So I thought that was cool that she kind of told us about that and says, oh, I trimmed this off, but yet she was still able to keep like this huge section and made a gorgeous card with that. And when you're doing like your own crafts, they don't always go perfectly. So I thought that that was a really great way to kind of show that it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be good. And then there was another one where she had stamped like the big background stamp on the card base, and when she'd stamped it on there, you could see like part of the card was sticking out at the bottom, like there was a little bit of blue sticking out at the bottom. And when she pulled it away, that piece didn't have any of the fancy scrolly stamped image on it. And when you looked at her finished card, she'd simply trimmed down that color just a little bit. So that little piece wasn't actually, it didn't matter. That part was gone. She put it on a white base and it just made the card super pretty. So yeah, it was just all in fixing up those little mistakes, those little boo-boos, those little imperfections. And, she just kind of found a way to kind of take that totally out of the equation. Rochelle said, I've used dye inks. It takes me back to my rendering days. When I discovered these, I fell in love. So easy to use. Yeah. So that's something that was really fun with that. Yeah, and I talked about like the rainbow stamping using the MISTI. That was really cool. And oh, yeah, and I thought it was great that you can use these for doing a little bit of embossing too, because embossing is something like, since gold has been such a strong color in our scrapbooking world like for so long now, it's a great way to bring a little bit of that gold or shine or something like that in with what she was doing, but just by stamping out your leaf and then, tucking the little end of it into the ink. I thought that was pretty great too. So just a question, Rochelle, when you did use your inks, did you actually did you use them for card projects or did you put them onto scrapbooking projects? I'm just curious how you'd use them because, I love watching projects with cards because it's a great way to sample new techniques and to try new things. But then once you find a little bit of comfort with using your supplies, then I like to take it and then apply it to my scrapbooking projects. That's something that I really like to do. Oh, and I had written down notes here. I said, I thought it was cute the way she had apologized for making so many cards because as if we don't want to see more examples of what she was doing. I had a little laugh at that. I'm sorry, there's so many cards. And then the thing about the nail polish, it was really cute that her daughter picked her nail polish. Just real life, right? Yeah, and I thought that the look of the oxide that it's a subtle but also dramatic effect, if that makes any sense, that something can be subtle and dramatic at the same time. It's achieved so easily, but then it has such an impact on it. So that was Jennifer McGuire's video about the Distress Oxide inks. Personally, I can't wait to play with them a little bit more. Rochelle says, both. Of course, I started with scrapbooking and discovered card making. Yeah, I always like to test things with cards or just little projects and then put it into the scrapbooking after I've learned how to do them. Heather says, maybe we should use them during load. Yeah, it's definitely always available. We can probably add a little color to your life or color to your project. Heather says that I can go shopping. We do have our mini load coming up next Sunday. Oh my gosh, it's coming up on Sunday already, guys. Are you excited? I'm so excited. So that is our Now and Then load, and it is just a 1-week mini summer load as Scrap Happy members. All you had to do was pop over to the site I gave you in your email, and you just have to join the Flickr group. You'll get all the emails, and that will give you all of the links to the daily prompts. So that should be great. And yeah, it's here before we know it. So make sure that you've joined the Flickr group, and that's all you have to do. And if you have friends that aren't Scrap Happy members, for starters, why aren't they Scrap Happy members? But if they're not, you can let them know that they can try out this load thing that you've probably talked their ear off about. They can try it for just $15, and all they have to do is go to scraphappy.org/summer, and that's where the sign up is for registration. So speaking of things on our calendar for this month, the Load Mini starts on Sunday the 13th and goes until Saturday the 19th, 7 days, 7 awesome pages that we will create together. And then as a little wrap-up party, we will do a happy hour on the 21st. And that is on Monday the 21st, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then on the 27th is going to be Scrapbook Live, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And my Plan Your Best Year event, if you'd like to attend that session, it's on the 29th. That's a Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And the calendar, if you go to our Facebook page, the whole calendar is under the pinned post. The pinned post has all of that with the video, and then there's the picture of the calendar. So that's all right there. Danelle says, I like the way you think, Heather. It's part of load, honey. I had to buy some more inks. And Heather says, yeah, I'm not a shopper, but I can make an exception for you guys. That's perfect. So here's my challenge to you guys. If you have some oxide inks, or if you don't, then I would suggest pulling out some kind of inks of some kind and seeing, trying to create something using an ink. Try to do that up this week. Share your projects on our Facebook page, because we want to see what people are making and show us what we can do with our stamps. Get us to play with stamps again, whether it's oxide inks or not oxide inks. Show us something that's been stamped, because we have these supplies and it would be great to see them used. And Rochelle says she's got her dates in her planner. That's perfect. So that's going to be it for today. That's my challenge to you. We'll start a thread and be like, share some kind of stamping project here. We want to see what you can create this week, just to get you in the creative spirit before we start load on Sunday. Awesome? Awesome. Okay, I am going to run. And thank you so much for joining me for movie night. And we'll be back on the 21st for our happy hour. So that's the plan. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.